She'd been invisible her whole life, until the moment she whispered 7 words that grounded a $1 million jet. Maya had learned long ago that adults don't listen to quiet foster kids, especially ones who'd been shuffled between homes like unwanted mail. But when she saw the maintenance worker's hands shake as he closed the engine panel, when she noticed the way he avoided eye contact with the flight crew, when she caught the metallic glint of something that shouldn't be there, she knew the millionaire tech mogul who just adopted her was about to board a plane that would never land safely. Everyone called her paranoid, damaged, too suspicious for her own good. They were about to learn that sometimes the most broken people see the clearest through the cracks. Maya's fingers trembled as she clutched the maintenance log sheet she'd glimpsed on the ground, the clipboard with falsified inspection records, handwriting that didn't match the nervous worker's shaky signature. The private airfield buzzed with pre-flight activity, but Maya saw what others missed, the way the mechanic kept glancing at his watch, the bead of sweat despite the cool morning air, the tool that glinted wrong in the engine housing. "There's something in the engine," she whispered to Richard Blackstone, her new adoptive father. "Please don't get on that plane." He looked down at her with the same expression every adult had worn for the past 13 years, patient condescension mixed with mild concern for her mental state. But this time, Maya's hypervigilance would save lives, even if it cost her the family she'd just found. 3 weeks earlier, Maya had stood in the hallway of Riverside Group Home, holding everything she owned in a garbage bag. The adoption certificate felt strange in her hands, crisp. Legal paper that promised belonging, but felt like another temporary arrangement. She'd learned not to trust promises. Richard Blackstone arrived in a Tesla that cost more than most people's houses, his nervous energy filling the car as he attempted conversation. "You'll like the house," he said, adjusting his rearview mirror for the 3rd time. "It has everything a teenager could want." Maya pressed her face to the window, watching suburbia give way to estates with gates and circular driveways. The Blackstone mansion rose before them like something from a movie, all glass and sharp angles, with solar panels that gleamed like scales. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, she could see a woman with kind eyes and worried hands. Elena Blackstone met them at the door, her smile genuine but fragile. "Welcome home, Maya." The words hung in the air, heavy with hope and uncertainty. Maya's new room overlooked the private airstrip behind the house, where Richard's jet sat gleaming on the tarmac. From her window, she could see everything: the security cameras, the motion sensors, the way the property stretched toward the woods, like a fortress protecting its secrets. That first night, Elena knocked softly on her door. "I know this is overwhelming," she said, sitting carefully on the edge of the bed. "Richard and we've wanted a daughter for so long. We just want you to feel safe here." Safe. Maya had stopped believing in safety years ago, but something in Elena's voice made her want to try. She nodded, clutching the adoption certificate that made her Maya Blackstone, at least on paper. "The house has a lot of technology," Elena continued. "Richard's company develops security systems, so everything here is, well, it's probably more than you're used to. If you need anything, just ask." After Elena left, Maya explored her room's boundaries. The walls were painted a soft lavender, and there were books on the shelves, real books, not the torn paperbacks from group homes. But Maya's trained eye caught the small details, the way the window locks were reinforced, the subtle camera in the corner disguised as a smoke detector, the fact that her door had no lock from the inside. Richard appeared in the doorway, his tall frame awkward in the feminine space. "Everything okay?" he asked, his voice carrying the uncertainty of someone who'd built an empire but couldn't figure out how to talk to a 13-year-old. "It's nice," Maya said, because it was true and because she'd learned to give adults the responses they wanted. Good, good. He fidgeted with his phone, then looked at her directly. "Maya, I want you to know that Elena and I chose you. This isn't temporary. This is home." Maya nodded again, but trust wasn't something she could manufacture on command. She'd wait and watch, like she always did. In her experience, people's true intentions revealed themselves eventually. That night, she lay in the expensive bed with its soft sheets and listened to the sounds of her new home. The house hummed with electricity and climate control, but beneath it all, she heard Richard and Elena talking in hushed voices downstairs. "She's so quiet," Elena was saying. "Do you think she's okay?" "She needs time," Richard replied. "The social worker said she's been through a lot. We just have to be patient." Maya pulled the covers over her head and stared at the adoption certificate on her nightstand. Maya Blackstone. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe this time she could stay. Maya's first week at the Blackstone house was an education in luxury and surveillance. She mapped every room, every exit, every hiding place, old habits from foster homes where knowing the escape routes meant survival. But this house was different. This house watched back. The security system was military grade, with cameras that tracked movement and sensors that detected body heat. Richard's home office was a fortress within a fortress, protected by biometric locks and reinforced glass. Maya noticed how he always angled his body to block his computer screen when she walked by, how he lowered his voice during phone calls. She found the hidden monitor on her third day. Tucked behind a false panel in the library, the screen showed feeds from throughout the house, including her own room. Maya stared at herself sleeping, her small form curled under expensive sheets, and felt the familiar weight of being watched settle over her shoulders. Interesting reading? Richard's voice made her jump. He stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "I was just looking for something to read," Maya said, her pulse hammering. Richard moved to the monitor and switched it off with practiced ease. "The security system is comprehensive," he said, not apologizing. "In my line of work, privacy is a luxury I can't afford. But I should have told you about the cameras." Maya nodded, filing away the information. Richard Blackstone was paranoid, which meant he had reasons to be afraid. The question was, of what? That evening, she overheard him on a conference call, his voice tight with frustration. "The Singapore deal is worth $200 million, he was saying. "If Chun's people think they can muscle us out with industrial espionage, they're mistaken. My encryption algorithms are bulletproof." Maya pressed closer to the door, her foster home skills at eavesdropping paying off. "Marcus, I need you to sweep the house again," Richard continued, "and increase security at the office. Someone's been asking questions about the AI patent, and I don't like it." Through the crack in the door, Maya saw a tall man with military-bearing nod once. Marcus Sullivan, Richard's head of security, had the cold eyes of someone who'd seen violence and wasn't afraid to use it. When he looked at Maya, she felt like a potential threat being assessed. Elena tried to bridge the gap between Maya and her new world with shopping trips and attempts at girl talk, but Maya could see the strain around her eyes. The Blackstone marriage was picture perfect on the surface, but Maya had learned to recognize the micro-expressions of people keeping secrets from each other. "Richard works too much," Elena confided one afternoon as they arranged flowers in the kitchen. "Sometimes I feel like I'm married to his company instead of him." Maya absorbed this information like a sponge. In her experience, unhappy adults made unpredictable decisions, and unpredictable decisions meant danger for kids like her. That night, she watched from her window as Richard's jet was serviced by a crew of mechanics. The work was routine, but Maya noticed how Marcus supervised every step, how he checked and double-checked the manifest. Whatever Richard was afraid of, it was serious enough to extend to his private aircraft. Rosa Martinez, the housekeeper, was the only adult who seemed to see Maya as a person rather than a problem to be solved. She was in her 60s, with gentle hands and eyes that missed nothing. "You watch everything, don't you, Mia?" Rosa said one morning as she prepared breakfast. Maya tensed, ready to deny it, but Rosa's smile was warm. "My grandmother was the same way," Rosa continued. "She could read people like books. Said it kept her alive during the war." She handed Maya a plate of eggs. "Sometimes watching is the smartest thing you can do." It was the first time an adult had validated Maya's hypervigilance instead of pathologizing it. She ate her breakfast in comfortable silence, feeling less alone than she had in years. But that afternoon, she noticed something that made her blood run cold. Someone had been in her room while she was at her therapy appointment. The books were aligned differently, her clothes rearranged with military precision. The invasion was subtle, professional, meant to be undetectable. Maya sat on her bed and looked up at the camera in the corner. Someone was watching her watch them. The question was whether that someone was protecting her or preparing to eliminate her dot in the Blackstone house. Maya was learning being invisible wasn't enough. Sometimes the most dangerous thing you could do was start to see too clearly. The announcement came at dinner on a Tuesday delivered with the casual authority of someone accustomed to making decisions for others. "We're going to Singapore next week," Richard said, cutting his steak with surgical precision. "There's a tech conference I need to attend, and I thought it would be good for us to travel as a family." Maya's fork paused halfway to her mouth. In her experience, sudden changes in routine were never good signs. "All of us?" she asked. "Of course," Elena sighed, her smile bright but forced. "It'll be like a vacation." "You've never been to Asia, have you?" Maya shook her head, studying Richard's face. He was scrolling through his phone while eating, his jaw tense in a way that suggested the Singapore trip was about business, not family bonding. That night, she heard him on another call, his voice carrying through the house's expensive but imperfect soundproofing. "The patent demonstration is scheduled for Thursday," he was saying. "If we can secure the military contracts, we'll have a monopoly on surveillance AI for the next decade." Maya crept closer to his office door, her bare feet silent on the hardwood floors. "I don't care what Chun's offering," Richard continued, his voice rising. "The technology isn't for sale. Not to the Chinese. Not to anyone. Some things are more important than money." There was a pause. Then Richard's voice dropped to a whisper. "What do you mean? Or else, are you threatening me?" Maya's pulse quickened. She pressed her ear to the door, catching fragments of the conversation. "My family's not part of this," Richard was saying. "Leave them out of it." "No, I won't reconsider." "The answer is no." The call ended abruptly, followed by the sound of something heavy hitting the wall. Maya scrambled back to her room, her mind racing. Someone was pressuring Richard about his technology, and they were willing to make threats. The next morning, Elena seemed determined to make the Singapore trip sound like an adventure. She spread travel brochures across the kitchen table, pointing out tourist destinations and cultural sites. "We could visit the gardens by the bay," she said, "and the Singapore Flyer. It's like a giant Ferris wheel with amazing views." But Maya noticed the way Elena's hands shook slightly as she turned the pages, how she kept glancing toward Richard's office. Whatever was happening, Elena knew more than she was letting on. Marcus appeared in the kitchen doorway, his presence immediately shifting the atmosphere. "Mr. Blackstone wants to see you both," he said to Elena and Maya. "Something about travel arrangements." In Richard's office, Maya took in the details with her usual precision. Papers were scattered across his desk: contracts, technical specifications, and what looked like threat assessments. A photograph of Richard shaking hands with military officials was prominently displayed, along with awards for innovation in artificial intelligence. "Singapore will be a working trip," Richard said without preamble. "Maya, you'll need to stay close to Elena at all times. Don't wander off, don't talk to strangers, and if anyone asks about my work, you say nothing. Understood?" Maya nodded, filing away the paranoia in his voice. "Is something wrong?" Richard's laugh was brittle. "In my business, something's always wrong. The technology sector is cutthroat, and there are people who would do anything to get their hands on what I've developed." He pulled out a tablet and showed them pictures of a sleek aircraft. "We'll be taking the corporate jet. It's safer than commercial flights, more control over who has access to the plane, and the passenger manifest." Maya studied the images, noting the registration numbers and the modification to the engines. "It's smaller than I expected," she said. "But faster," Richard replied, "and equipped with the latest security features. Marcus has personally overseen all the safety protocols." Marcus stepped forward, his expression serious. "The flight crew has been thoroughly vetted, and the aircraft undergoes comprehensive maintenance before every trip. Nothing is left to chance." As they discussed logistics, Maya noticed an encrypted USB drive on Richard's desk, its surface scratched from frequent use. Whatever was on that drive was important enough to travel with, important enough to protect with military-grade encryption. That evening, she overheard Elena on the phone with someone, her voice strained. "I don't like this, Mom," Elena was saying. "Richard's been different lately, more paranoid, more secretive, and now he wants to drag Maya into whatever's happening with his business." Maya absorbed this information with growing unease. Elena's instincts were telling her the same thing Maya's were, that the Singapore trip was dangerous, that Richard's technology had made him enemies, and that traveling as a family might not be the protection he thought it was. The question was whether those enemies were close enough to touch them, or if they were already inside the house, watching and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Maya looked out her window at the jet sitting on the private airstrip, gleaming in the afternoon sun, and wondered if it would become their salvation or their tomb. Maya's investigation began with fragments overheard phone calls, whispered conversations, and documents glimpsed through doorways. She'd learned long ago that adults revealed their secrets in unguarded moments, and the Blackstone house was full of shadows where a quiet teenager could disappear. The threatening letter arrived on a Thursday, buried in Richard's business correspondence like a snake in a garden. Maya saw it while delivering lunch to his office, the seemingly innocent letterhead of Chen Technologies masking words that made her blood run cold. Mr. Blackstone, the letter read in formal English, your continued refusal to negotiate regarding the AI surveillance patents puts you in an untenable position. The Singapore conference presents an opportunity for a final discussion. We hope you will reconsider your stance before it becomes irreversible. Maya memorized every word before. Richard snatched the letter away, his face pale with barely controlled rage. How long have you been standing there? He demanded. I just brought your sandwich, Maya said, affecting the blank expression that had protected her through years of foster care. But Richard's paranoia had sharpened his instincts. Maya, I need you to understand something. There are people who would hurt you to get to me. That's why we have security, why Marcus watches over us. If anyone ever approaches you, anyone at all, you come to me immediately. Maya nodded, but privately she wondered if the danger was already inside their walls. Rosa became her unlikely ally in those tense days before the Singapore trip. The housekeeper had worked for the Blackstone family for 15 years, and she'd developed an intuitive understanding of the house's rhythms and secrets. Someone's been asking questions about Mr. Richard's work, Rosa confided one afternoon as they folded laundry together. People calling the office, strangers driving by. The house makes me nervous. What kind of questions? Maya asked. Rosa glanced around nervously. About his travel schedule, about the family. One man called pretending to be from the airline, wanting to confirm flight details. But we don't use airlines, Mia. We used a private jet. Maya felt the familiar chill of recognition. Someone was gathering intelligence, preparing for something. Did you tell Richard? I told Mr. Marcus, Rosa said. But he said it was probably just business competitors doing research. Told me not to worry Mr. Richard with every little thing. The mention of Marcus made Maya's instincts prickle. She'd noticed how the head of security always seemed to know exactly where everyone was, how he had access to all the house's systems, how his presence made even Elena uncomfortable. That night, Maya waited until the house was quiet before slipping out of her room. She'd become expert at navigating the mansion's blind spots, avoiding the cameras through a combination of timing and careful movement. The security system had patterns, and Maya had learned them all. Richard's office was protected by biometric locks, but his home computer was in the library, used for personal correspondence and family business. Maya had watched him enter the password multiple times, a combination of Elena's birthday and his company's founding date. Adults were surprisingly predictable with their security choices. The computer's files revealed a digital trail of escalating threats. Chen Technologies wasn't just a competitor. They were backed by military interests who saw Richard's AI surveillance technology as a national security asset. The Singapore conference was supposed to be a negotiation, but the correspondence made it clear that Chun's people were done negotiating. Maya found the news clipping buried in a folder, marked Industrial Espionage. The headline read, Tech Executive Dies in Mysterious Plane Crash. The article described the death of Dr. James Morrison, a rival AI developer who'd refused to sell his patents to foreign interests. The crash had been ruled mechanical failure, but Maya's trained eye caught the similarities to their situation. Morrison had received threatening letters. Morrison had been targeted for his military AI contracts. Morrison had died on his way to a conference where he was supposed to demonstrate his technology. Maya's hands shook as she printed the article, hiding it in her jacket. She'd found the pattern, but the question remained. Who in Richard's inner circle was feeding information to his enemies? She was about to log off when she heard footsteps in the hallway. Maya quickly closed the files and slipped behind the heavy curtains, her heart hammering as someone entered the library. Through the gap in the fabric, she saw Marcus checking the computer, his face illuminated by the screen's glow. He wasn't just looking, he was copying files. downloading data onto a small device that he tucked into his jacket. Maya held her breath as Marcus swept the room with his eyes, his hand resting on the weapon at his hip. After what felt like hours, he left, his footsteps fading down the hallway. Maya waited another 10 minutes before emerging from her hiding place. Marcus had access to everything: the house, the security systems, Richard's schedule. If he was working for Chun Technologies, then the Blackstone family was already compromised. She made it back to her room just as Elena knocked on the door. "Can't sleep?" Elena asked, noting Maya's clothes and the flush in her cheeks. "Just restless," Maya said. "The Singapore trip has me nervous." Elena sat on the edge of the bed, her expression troubled. "You and me both, Maya. If something feels wrong, if anything happens, I want you to trust your instincts. Sometimes adults make mistakes, even when they think they're protecting the people they love." It was the closest thing to a warning Elena could give without betraying her husband. Maya squeezed her hand, understanding that Elena's maternal instincts were picking up the same danger signals that Maya's hypervigilance had detected. That night, Maya lay awake staring at the news clipping, wondering if Dr. Morrison had seen his betrayal coming, if he'd known which of his trusted allies had sold him out. The Singapore conference was 5 days away, and Maya was running out of time to prove that the greatest threat to the Blackstone family wasn't waiting for them. Overseas, it was already living in their house. The private airfield hummed with pre-flight activity as the Blackstone family arrived for their departure to Singapore. Maya pressed her face to the car window, studying the mechanics working around Richard's jet with her usual intensity. Something felt wrong, but she couldn't identify what until she saw the maintenance workers' hands. They were shaking. Marcus supervised the loading of their luggage while Richard handled last-minute calls about the conference. Elena sat beside Maya in the terminal's VIP lounge, trying to mask her own anxiety with forced cheerfulness about their upcoming adventure. "The flight's about 18 hours, Elena said, flipping through a travel magazine. "Richard arranged for the cabin to be configured with sleeping quarters, so we should arrive rested." Maya nodded absently, her attention focused on the activity outside. The nervous maintenance worker, she'd mentally cataloged him as Tom. Based on his name, Tag kept glancing at his watch and wiping sweat from his forehead despite the cool morning air. His toolkit lay open beside the jet's engine housing, and Maya could see something metallic glinting inside that didn't match the standard maintenance equipment. "I need to use the bathroom," Maya said, standing abruptly. Elena looked up from her magazine. "We'll be boarding in 15 minutes. I'll be quick." Maya slipped out of the lounge and made her way toward the maintenance area, staying low and using the fuel trucks as cover. She'd perfected this kind of surveillance in foster homes, where information was survival currency. Tom was alone now, the other mechanics having moved to different sections of the aircraft. Maya watched as he opened a specialized case and removed what looked like a small electronic device. Her breath caught as she realized what she was seeing. It wasn't standard maintenance equipment. It was something that definitely didn't belong in a jet engine. The maintenance log sheet lay on the ground beside Tom's toolkit, and Maya could see from her hiding spot that the handwriting didn't match his earlier signatures. Someone else had filled out the inspection records, someone with steadier hands and clearer penmanship. The documents were falsified. Tom was installing something in the engine housing, his movements quick and precise, despite his obvious nervousness. Maya's mind raced through the possibilities: a listening device, a tracking beacon, or something far more sinister. Dr. Morrison's mysterious plane crash suddenly seemed less mysterious. She had to warn Richard. But who would believe a 13-year-old foster kid with a history of behavioral problems? Maya's reputation for hypervigilance and paranoia would work against her, especially when accusing a certified aircraft mechanic of sabotage. But as Tom closed the engine panel and gathered his tools, Maya knew she had to try. The metallic device was now hidden inside the jet's engine, and whatever its purpose, it wasn't meant to help them reach Singapore safely. Maya circled back to the terminal, her pulse hammering as she tried to formulate words that would convince adults to take her seriously. Richard was ending his phone call as she approached, his expression already impatient. "Dad," she said, the words still foreign on her tongue. "There's something wrong with the plane." Richard's eyebrows rose. "Wrong how?" The maintenance worker, Tom, he was nervous. really nervous. And he put something in the engine that wasn't supposed to be there. I saw it. Marcus appeared at Richard's elbow, his expression skeptical. Maya, aircraft maintenance involves a lot of specialized equipment. You might have seen something you didn't recognize. It wasn't maintenance equipment, Maya insisted. And the log sheet, the handwriting doesn't match his other signatures. Someone else filled it out. Richard exchanged a look with Marcus, and Maya could see the familiar expression forming patient condescension mixed with concern for her mental state. Sweetheart, Richard said gently, I know you're nervous about flying, but Tom's been maintaining aircraft for 20 years. He's thoroughly vetted. Please, Maya said, her voice cracking with frustration. Just check the engine. Just look. Elena joined them, sensing the tension. What's happening? Maya thinks there's something wrong with the plane, Richard explained. She saw Tom working on the engine and got worried. Elena looked at Maya's face, pale, determined, frightened, and something shifted in her expression. What kind of something? She asked. A device, Maya said. Small, electronic. He hid it in the engine housing after everyone else left. Marcus's hand moved to his radio. I'll have the crew do another inspection, he said smoothly. Standard procedure when there are concerns. But Maya caught the look that passed between Marcus and Tom across the tarmac. A brief nod, a subtle hand signal. They knew each other. They were working together. No, Maya said, stepping backward. Not Marcus. Get someone else to check. Get the airport security. Now Richard's patience was visibly fraying. Maya, Marcus is head of security. If there's a problem with the aircraft, he's the person to handle it. But Maya stopped, realizing how it would sound. Accusing Marcus of conspiracy would only make her seem more unstable, more paranoid. She was trapped between truth and credibility. There's something in the engine, she said finally, her voice small but determined. Please don't get on that plane. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Richard looked at his daughter, because that's what she was now, legally, if not emotionally, and saw 13 years of trauma and mistrust staring back at him. Every instinct told him that Maya was having an episode, that her hypervigilance was creating threats where none existed. But Elena was watching Maya's face, seeing something that the men had missed. Richard, she said quietly, what if she's right? Marcus's voice crackled over the radio. Maintenance crew reports no issues with the aircraft. All systems green for departure. Maya felt the familiar sensation of being dismissed, of having her voice swallowed by adult certainty. But this time, lives were at stake, including her own. There's something in the engine, she repeated, louder now. I saw him put something in the engine. Please don't make us get on that plane. And for the first time in her life, the adults stopped and listened. The flight was grounded for 6 hours, while federal aviation inspectors crawled over every inch of Richard's private jet. They found nothing, no device, no sabotage, no evidence of tampering. The maintenance logs checked out. Tom's credentials were spotless, and Maya became the girl who cried terrorism in an airport full of security professionals. The ride home was Arctic silence, punctuated by Richard's controlled fury and Elena's worried glances in the rearview mirror. Maya sat in the back seat, feeling the familiar weight of adult disappointment settling over her shoulders like a lead blanket. Do you have any idea what you've done? Richard asked as they pulled into their driveway. The conference starts tomorrow. 3 years of negotiations, gone. Military contracts worth hundreds of millions, canceled because my daughter had a panic attack. Maya wanted to defend herself, to explain that she'd seen what she'd seen, but the words died in her throat. Without proof, she was just another damaged kid from the foster system, seeing threats in shadows. Inside the house, Richard's business associates began calling immediately. Maya could hear fragments of conversations through the walls, apologies, explanations, damage control. The Singapore deal was dead, and everyone wanted to know why. Richard Blackstone's family drama had derailed a $250 million negotiation. Sir, I'm sorry about the delay, Marcus said, his voice carrying the appropriate mixture of concern and professionalism. The girl's been through a lot. Sometimes trauma manifests as paranoid behavior. Maya flinched at being discussed in the third person, but she noticed something in Marcus's tone: relief, not disappointment. He was sorry the flight had been delayed, not canceled, as if he'd been counting on them getting on that plane. Elena found Maya in her room that evening, staring out the window at the jet that now seemed more like a prison than a promise of adventure. I believe you saw something, Elena said quietly. Sitting on the edge of the bed, Maya turned, hope flickering in her chest. You do? I believe you saw something that frightened you. Whether it was what you thought it was. Elena paused, choosing her words carefully. Maya, you've been through terrible things. Sometimes our minds try to protect us by seeing danger where there might not be any. It was the kindest way anyone had ever called her delusional, but it still felt like betrayal. Maya nodded, understanding that even Elena's support came with conditions. That night, she couldn't sleep. Every foster home had taught her the same lesson. When adults stopped believing you, you became invisible again. Invisible meant powerless, and powerless meant dangerous things could happen while everyone looked the other way. She was staring at the ceiling when she heard Richard's voice drifting up from his office. He was on another late-night call, his tone sharper than usual. No, we can't reschedule for next week, he was saying. The Singapore window is closed. Chun's people made that very clear. What do you mean? Other options? We've been through this. Maya crept to the top of the stairs, her bare feet silent on the hardwood. I won't be intimidated, Richard continued. If they want the technology, they can make a legitimate offer through proper channels. I'm not selling to the highest bidder just because they made some vague threats. There was a long pause, then Richard's voice dropped to a whisper. What kind of accident? No, absolutely not. I have a family to think about. Maya's blood chilled. Someone was suggesting that Richard might have an accident if he continued to refuse their demands. The grounded flight suddenly looked less like paranoia and more like a narrow escape. She made it back to her room just as footsteps approached the stairs. Through her door, she heard Richard and Marcus talking in low voices. The girl's becoming a problem, Marcus was saying. Her accusations at the airport drew too much attention. What if she starts talking to the wrong people? Maya's just a kid with trust issues, Richard replied. She'll settle down once she realizes she's safe here. Maybe, but if she keeps making wild claims about threats and sabotage, it could complicate things. People might start asking questions we don't want. Answered. Maya pressed her ear to the door, her heart hammering. What are you suggesting? Richard asked. Nothing extreme, just maybe she'd be happier somewhere with more specialized care, somewhere equipped to handle her particular needs. The conversation moved away, but Maya had heard enough. Marcus was laying the groundwork to have her removed from the house, sent to some institution where her warnings would be dismissed as the ravings of a troubled teenager. She looked at the adoption certificate on her nightstand. Maya Blackstone, daughter and heir to a fortune that someone was willing to kill for. But she was also the inconvenient witness who disrupted their timeline. The foster kid whose hypervigilance had seen too much. Maya opened her laptop and began searching for news about Dr. Morrison, the tech executive who died in the mysterious plane crash. She found the article she'd printed from Ricker. Maya found the burner phone wedged behind her dresser on a Thursday morning, its presence as foreign and threatening as a snake in her bed. The device was cheap, untraceable, and definitely not something a 13-year-old should own. Someone had planted it there while she was at her mandatory therapy session, and Maya's blood ran cold as she realized what it meant. They were setting her up. The phone contained text messages that made her stomach twist with fear, threats against Richard's life, detailed information about his security protocols, and payment confirmations for industrial espionage. Any adult finding this device would conclude that Maya Blackstone was either a terrorist or a pawn in someone else's game. Maya's foster care experience had taught her about evidence planting. She'd seen kids framed for theft, vandalism, and worse by adults who wanted them gone. But this was different. This wasn't about making her look bad. This was about making her look dangerous. She powered down the phone and slipped it into her backpack, her mind racing through possibilities. Marcus had access to her room, opportunity to plant evidence, and motivation to discredit her before she could expose his betrayal. But Maya had learned a few things during her years in the system, including how to trace digital breadcrumbs. Rosa found her in the kitchen an hour later, hunched over her laptop with an intensity that would have worried any normal adult. "Haces, Mia?" Rosa asked, setting down her cleaning supplies. "Research," Maya replied, not looking up from the screen. She'd been teaching herself basic cybersecurity through online tutorials. partly out of curiosity and partly out of necessity. Foster kids learn to be resourceful. Research about what? Maya hesitated, then made a decision that would change everything. Rosa, if I tell you something important, will you promise to listen before you decide I'm crazy? Rosa sat down across from her, her weathered hands folding on the table. I'm listening. Maya pulled out the burner phone and explained how she'd found it, watching Rosa's expression shift from confusion to alarm. Then she showed her the text messages, the payment confirmations, and the detailed information about Richard's business that no teenager should possess. Someone planted this to make me look guilty, Maya said. They want Richard to think I'm working with his enemies. Rosa studied the phone with the careful attention of someone who'd lived through enough hardship to recognize real danger. Who would do this? Someone with access to my room. Someone who knows Richard's security protocols. Someone who benefits if I'm removed from the house before I can expose them. Rosa's eyes widened as the implication sank in. Marcus. Maya nodded. I think he's been selling information to Chun Technologies. The grounded flight ruined their timeline, so now they're trying to eliminate me before I can warn Richard. But why would they want to hurt Mr. Richard? He's a good man. Maya pulled up the research she'd compiled about Dr. Morrison and the other tech executives who died in suspicious accidents. It's about the AI technology. Richard developed something that could change military surveillance forever. And there are people who will kill to get it. Rosa stared at the screen, her face pale. My nephew Carlos worked for Dr. Morrison, she said quietly. He died in that plane crash. Maya's heart stopped. Your nephew was on the plane? Carlos was Dr. Morrison's personal assistant. He called me the night before, said he was worried about his boss, said there were strange people asking questions about their travel plans. Rosa's voice cracked. The next day, they were all dead. Maya reached across the table and squeezed Rosa's hand. I'm sorry, but Rosa, this means you understand what we're dealing with. These people don't just kill their targets. They eliminate everyone who might be a witness. Rosa nodded, tears in her eyes. What do we do? Maya looked at the burner phone, then at her laptop screen full of damning evidence. We trace this phone's origin and prove Marcus planted it. And we do it before he can convince Richard to have me committed. They spent the next hour working together, Rosa keeping watch, while Maya used the house's Wi-Fi network to trace the phone's digital fingerprints. She found purchase records, activation data, and location pings that painted a clear picture of the device's journey from an electronics store to Marcus's possession to her bedroom. Got it, Maya whispered, saving the evidence to her flash drive. The phone was purchased with a credit card registered to a shell company that Marcus uses for his security consulting business. Rosa leaned over her shoulder, studying the screen. This proves he planted it. It proves he bought it. Combined with the fact that he has access to my room and detailed knowledge of Richard's business, it's enough to raise serious questions about his loyalty. But even as Maya compiled her evidence, she knew the challenge remained, convincing Richard to listen to a traumatized foster kid over his trusted head of security. Adults had a way of explaining away evidence when it conflicted with their existing beliefs, and Richard's faith in Marcus ran deep. We need more than just the phone, Maya said. We need to catch him in the act. Rosa's expression hardened with determination. Then we watch him, and we wait. That afternoon, Maya used the house's own security system against Marcus, accessing the camera feeds through a back door she discovered in Richard's network. She watched him make calls from his car, saw him meet with strangers in parking lots, observed him copying files from Richard's computer when the family was away. But the smoking gun came that evening, when Maya watched Marcus retrieve a second burner phone from his personal safe and place a call that lasted exactly 3 minutes. Through lip-reading skills she developed to survive in noisy foster homes, Maya made out enough words to understand. Marcus was confirming Richard's schedule for the rescheduled Singapore trip. The trap was being reset. And this time, Maya might not be around to spring it. She had 48 hours to expose Marcus before Richard signed the papers that would have her committed to a psychiatric facility. 48 hours to save her new family from the man they trusted to protect them. Maya looked at Rosa, seeing her own determination reflected in the older woman's eyes. Are you ready to help me stop him? Rosa nodded grimly. For Carlos. And for you, Mia. It's time someone listened to what you have to say. The corporate espionage file was hidden in Marcus's private office like a digital smoking gun, encrypted with military-grade security, but accessible to someone who knew where to look. Maya had spent 3 sleepless nights mapping the security, systems blind spots, timing Marcus's patrols, and learning the electronic locks. Override codes from watching him work. Rosa kept watch from the kitchen while Maya slipped into Marcus's basement office, her heart hammering against her ribs. The space was sterile and efficient, multiple monitors, communications equipment, and a gun safe that looked like it belonged in a military armory rather than a suburban home security office. Maya's fingers flew over the keyboard, using techniques she'd learned from online forums where foster kids shared survival skills. Marcus's password was easier to crack than she'd expected. He used the same combination as the house's main security system, a mistake that would have gotten him fired from any legitimate security firm. The files she found made her stomach turn. Corporate espionage contracts worth millions of dollars. Detailed dossiers on tech executives, including Richard, and correspondence with Chun Technologies that laid out a systematic plan to acquire military AI patents through intimidation, theft, and elimination. Dr. Morrison's file was thick with surveillance photos, travel itineraries, and psychological profiles of his family members. The final entry was dated 2 days before his plane crash. Target remains non-compliant. Recommend permanent solution. Collateral damage acceptable. Maya's hands shook as she realized she was looking at a death warrant signed by Marcus Sullivan. Richard's file was even more comprehensive. Marcus had documented every aspect of the Blackstone family's routine, including Maya's adoption, Elena's medical appointments, and Richard's growing paranoia about industrial espionage. The most recent entry made Maya's blood freeze. New family. Dynamic creates complications. Foster daughter displays suspicious behavior and potential security risk. Recommend removal before Phase 2 implementation. Phase 2 was scheduled for the following week. Rescheduled business trip to London, where Richard would finally demonstrate his eye surveillance technology to potential military buyers. Marcus had already arranged for mechanical difficulties to eliminate Richard and his technologies simultaneously, just like Dr. Morrison, but Maya's presence in the house had complicated their timeline. Her warnings at the airport had drawn unwanted attention, and her hypervigilant behavior suggested she might uncover their operation. The burner phone had been Plan A: frame her as a security threat and have her institutionalized. If that failed, Marcus had backup plans that Maya didn't want to contemplate. She copied the files to her flash drive and was about to log off when she heard footsteps in the hallway above. Rosa's warning knock, 3 short taps, told her someone was coming. Maya shut down the computer and slipped behind the filing cabinet just as Marcus's voice carried down the stairs. He was on the phone, his tone cold and professional. "The girl's still here," he was saying. "Blackstone's getting attached, making it harder to arrange her removal. No, we can't wait much longer. She's too observant, asks too many questions." Maya pressed herself deeper into the shadows, her foster care skills at hiding coming in handy once again. "The London trip is our best opportunity," Marcus continued. "Clean elimination, technology destroyed, no loose ends. But first, we need to neutralize the witness through the gap between the filing cabinets." Maya saw Marcus access his personal safe and remove what looked like medical documents, her adoption papers, psychological evaluations, and what appeared to be a court order for involuntary commitment. "The paperwork's ready," Marcus said into the phone. "Dr. Patterson will certify her as a danger to herself and others. Elena's already expressing concerns about Maya's paranoid episodes, so it won't be hard to convince them it's for her own good." Maya bit back a gasp. Dr. Patterson was her court-appointed therapist, the woman who'd been asking increasingly pointed questions about Maya's adjustment issues and trauma responses. She wasn't trying to help Maya heal. She was building a case to have her committed. "Once the girl's safely in the facility, we proceed with Phase 2, Marcus said. "Blackstone will be grief-stricken about his daughter's breakdown, vulnerable to suggestion. He'll be eager to escape on that London trip, and this time there won't be any inconvenient warnings about mechanical problems. The call ended, and Maya watched Marcus lock the documents back in his safe. She waited until his footsteps faded before emerging from her hiding spot, her mind reeling with the scope of the conspiracy. Marcus wasn't just Richard's head of security. He was a professional assassin specializing in corporate espionage. He'd been planning Richard's murder for months, methodically eliminating obstacles and witnesses. Dr. Morrison had been just the beginning. There were other files, other targets, other accidents waiting to happen. Maya made it back to her room without being seen, but she knew time was running out. The commitment papers were ready. Dr. Patterson was compromised, and Marcus had the legal authority to have her removed from the house within 24 hours. She looked at the flash drive containing proof of Marcus's guilt and wondered if evidence would be enough. Adults had a way of explaining away inconvenient truths, especially when those truths came from traumatized foster kids with histories of behavioral problems. But Maya had learned something important during her investigation. She wasn't the only one who'd noticed Marcus's strange behavior. Elena's maternal instincts were picking up the same warning signals that Maya's hypervigilance had detected, and Rosa's grief over her nephew's death had given her a powerful motivation to seek justice. Maya opened her laptop and began composing a message that would either save her family or get her killed. Either way, she was done being invisible. It was time for the adults to listen, whether they wanted to or not. The quiet foster kid who'd learned to watch from the shadows was about to step into the light, and Marcus Sullivan's carefully orchestrated conspiracy was about to crumble around him. Maya just hoped she'd live long enough to see it happen. The hidden camera memory card was smaller than a thumbnail, but contained enough evidence to destroy Marcus's carefully constructed facade. Maya had discovered it by accident while exploring the mansion's security system tucked inside a smoke detector that wasn't connected to the main network. Marcus's private surveillance operation, designed to monitor the family's most intimate moments, had become the key to his downfall. Maya sat in her room at 3 a.m., uploading the camera's contents to her laptop while the house slept around her. What she found made her stomach clench with a mixture of rage and vindication. Hours of footage showing Marcus meeting with unknown contacts, copying files from Richard's computer, and planting evidence throughout the house. But the most damning clip showed Marcus in Elena's bedroom, installing a hidden microphone while the family was at Maya's therapy appointment. His movements were practiced, professional. This wasn't his first time violating their privacy. He'd been watching them for months, gathering intelligence on their habits, their fears, their vulnerabilities. Elena appeared in the doorway of Maya's room like a ghost, her face pale in the blue glow of the laptop screen. "Can't sleep either?" she asked, noting Maya's intense focus on the computer. Maya looked up, seeing something different in Elena's expression, a wariness that hadn't been there before, a mother's instinct recognizing danger. "Elena, I need to show you something, but you have to promise to watch the whole thing before you decide I'm crazy." Elena closed the door and sat on the bed, her presence warm and reassuring despite the late hour. "Show me." Maya played the footage chronologically, starting with Marcus's meetings in parking lots and ending with him installing surveillance equipment in Elena's private spaces. She watched Elena's face transform from confusion to horror to fury as the scope of Marcus's betrayal became clear. "He's been watching us," Elena whispered, "recording our conversations, monitoring our movements." "For how long?" "Months," Maya said. "Maybe since I arrived. He's been feeding information to Richard's enemies, helping them plan." "Elena, they killed Dr. Morrison. The plane crash wasn't an accident." Elena stared at the screen, her hands shaking. The Singapore trip, the conference Richard was supposed to attend, it was a trap. Marcus arranged for mechanical problems that would have eliminated Richard and his technology. When I grounded the flight, it ruined their timeline. Elena stood and began pacing, her mind processing the implications. "That's why Marcus wanted you committed. You're the only one who saw through their plan." Maya nodded, relief flooding through her at finally having an adult who believed her. "He's planning something for the London trip. I found files in his office communications with Chun Technologies, contracts for corporate espionage, detailed plans for eliminating tech executives who won't sell their patents." "We have to tell Richard," Elena said. "Will he believe us?" "Marcus has been his security chief for 5 years. He trusts him completely. Elena's expression hardened with determination. He'll believe the evidence. Richard's paranoid about security. When he sees what Marcus has been doing, he'll understand the danger we're in. But even as Elena spoke, Maya heard the uncertainty in her voice. Richard's faith in Marcus ran deep, built on years of loyal service and professional competence. Breaking that trust would require more than security footage and circumstantial evidence. There's something else, Maya said, pulling up the Chung Technologies correspondence. The Singapore conference wasn't just about Richard's technology. They're targeting multiple executives, eliminating anyone who refuses to cooperate with their acquisition program. Richard's just one name on a very long list. Elena read over Maya's shoulder, her face growing paler with each document. We're not just talking about corporate espionage. This is organized assassination. Marcus specializes in making murders look like accidents. Dr. Morrison's plane crash. A tech executive's car brake failure. Another one's allergic reaction to a medication he'd never taken before. They're systematically eliminating competition in the military AI market. Elena sat back down, overwhelmed by the scope of the conspiracy. Maya, how did you figure all this out? You're 13 years old. Maya looked at her adoptive mother, seeing genuine curiosity rather than condescension. Foster care teaches you to watch people carefully. Adults lie, but their behavior tells the truth. Marcus has been acting wrong since I arrived, too interested in my routine, too quick to dismiss my concerns, too eager to have me removed from the house. And I missed it, Elena said, guilt coloring her voice. You noticed more than you realized. Your instincts kept warning you that something was wrong with the Singapore trip, that Richard was in danger. You just didn't know where the threat was coming from. Elena studied the evidence. Maya had compiled the planted burner phone, the falsified maintenance records, the surveillance footage of Marcus's secret meetings. It painted a picture of betrayal so comprehensive that even the most trusting person would have to acknowledge it. What's our next step? Elena asked. Maya felt a surge of pride at being included in the planning. We need more real-time evidence. Something that shows Marcus actively betraying Richard, not just historical proof of his crimes. How do we get that? Maya smiled grimly. We use the house's own security system against him. I've been monitoring his communications, and he's scheduled a meeting tomorrow night with his Chan Technologies contact. If we can record that conversation, we'll have everything we need. Elena nodded, her maternal protectiveness transforming into something harder and more dangerous. And then we save Richard from the man he trusted to protect him. As dawn broke over the Blackstone mansion, Maya and Elena finalized their plan to expose Marcus's conspiracy. They had evidence, they had motivation, and they had each other. The quiet foster kid and the protective mother were about to take on a professional assassin, and Maya found herself believing they might actually win. For the first time in her life, Maya felt the power of being truly heard, truly believed, truly supported. The invisible girl was invisible no more. And Marcus Sullivan was about to learn that the most dangerous person in any room is the one everyone underestimates. Rosa's family photo sat on the kitchen table like a bridge between past and present, its edges worn from years of handling. Maya stared at the young man in military uniform standing beside Rosa's sister, his smile bright with the confidence of someone who believed the world was fundamentally safe. That's Carlos, Rosa said, her voice thick with emotion. He was going to be an engineer, like his father. Smart boy, always asking questions, always watching everything. Maya traced her finger along the photo's edge, recognizing something familiar in Carlos's expression. He saw things too, didn't he? Rosa nodded. The last time he called me, he said Dr. Morrison was scared, said there were people following him, people asking questions about his work. Carlos had started keeping records, writing down license plates, taking pictures of strangers who appeared at the office. What happened to those records? They disappeared after the crash. Carlos's apartment was broken into, his computer stolen. The police said it was just a robbery, but nothing else was missing. Rosa's hands clenched around her coffee cup. I knew it wasn't random. I just didn't know what to do about it. Elena leaned forward, her expression intense. Rosa, why didn't you tell us about this before? Who would believe an old housekeeper? And I wasn't sure about anything until Maya started asking the same questions Carlos had asked. Rosa looked at Maya with something approaching reverence. You see what he saw, Mia. The patterns that adults miss. Maya felt the weight of that recognition, the burden of being the one who noticed what others overlooked. "Rosa, do you still have any of Carlos's things? Anything the thieves might have missed?" Rosa's eyes brightened. "His backup drive. He hid it in my house before his last trip. Said he was worried about his computer being hacked. I never looked at it. I don't understand technology like you do. Can you get it? It's in my bedroom at home." "But Maya, if Marcus finds out we're investigating him." Elena reached across the table and squeezed Rosa's hand. "We're already in danger. The question is whether we're going to be victims or survivors." That afternoon, while Marcus was occupied with Richard's security briefing for the London trip, the three women drove to Rosa's modest house across town. Maya had never seen Rosa's private space before it was warm and lived in, filled with family photos and religious icons that spoke of faith tested by loss. Carlos's backup drive was hidden inside a false bottom in Rosa's jewelry box. A precaution that had seemed paranoid at the time, but now looked like foresight. Maya connected it to her laptop while Rosa and Elena kept watch, her heart racing as files began to populate the screen. He documented everything, Maya breathed, scrolling through folders of surveillance photos, audio recordings, and meticulous notes about suspicious activities around Dr. Morrison's company. "Look at this: license plates, meeting locations, financial transfers." Carlos built a complete intelligence file. Elena studied the photos over Maya's shoulder. "That's Marcus," she said, pointing to a figure in the background of several surveillance shots. He was already watching Dr. Morrison months before the crash. Maya found audio recordings that made her stomach turn. Conversations between Marcus and unknown contacts discussing target elimination and clean removal protocols. Carlos had somehow managed to bug Marcus's car, capturing hours of incriminating dialogue. "This proves Marcus killed Carlos," Rosa said, tears streaming down her face. "My nephew died because he was trying to protect his boss. And he succeeded, in a way," Maya said gently. "This evidence is going to expose the entire conspiracy. Carlos's investigation will finally get justice." But as Maya continued exploring the files, she found something that made her blood run cold. A folder labeled Blackstone File contained photos of Richard's house, detailed floor plans, and surveillance reports dating back 6 months long before Maya's adoption. "They've been planning this for months," Maya said. "Richard was always the target. My adoption was just a coincidence that complicated their timeline." Elena stared at the photos of her home, violation written across her face. "How did we not notice? How did Marcus get this close without us realizing?" "Because he's a professional," Maya said, "and because people trust security experts to protect them, not destroy them." Rosa wiped her eyes and straightened her shoulders. "What do we do now?" Maya looked at the two women who'd chosen to believe her, who'd risked their safety to help her uncover the truth. "Now we save Richard, and we make Marcus pay for what he did to Carlos." Elena nodded grimly. "How?" "Carlos's files contain enough evidence to convince any reasonable person that Marcus is a traitor. But we need to present it the right way, at the right time, when Richard can't dismiss it or explain it away." "When?" Rosa asked. Maya smiled, feeling the pieces of her plan falling into place. "Tonight. Marcus has a meeting with his Chon Technologies. Contact at midnight. We're going to record that conversation, and then we're going to wake Richard up and show him exactly who he's been trusting with our lives." Elena stood up, her expression determined. "What do you need us to do?" "Elena, you need to keep Richard distracted this evening so he doesn't notice when Rosa and I slip out to set up surveillance equipment. Rosa, you need to help me access Marcus's meeting location without being detected." Rosa nodded firmly. "For Carlos." Elena squeezed Maya's hand. "For all of us." As they drove back to the Blackstone mansion, Maya felt something she'd never experienced before: the power of having allies who believed in her completely. The invisible foster kid had found her voice, and now she had people willing to listen. Marcus Sullivan had spent months planning the perfect crime, but he'd made one crucial mistake. He'd underestimated the three women who loved Richard Blackstone enough to risk everything to save him. Tonight, the hunter would become the hunted, and Maya would finally prove that sometimes the smallest voice carries the greatest truth. The forged medical records lay spread across Dr. Patterson's desk like a death sentence written in clinical language. Maya stared at them through the office window, her heart hammering as she read phrases like acute paranoid ideation, danger, to self and others, and immediate involuntary commitment recommended. She'd followed Marcus to this late-night meeting, using Rosa's car and the surveillance skills she'd honed through years of foster care. Dr. Patterson's office was supposed to be closed, but lights blazed in the consultation room where Maya's therapist was reviewing documents that would destroy her life. The girl's behavior has become increasingly erratic, Dr. Patterson was saying, her voice carrying through the thin walls. Her claims about airplane sabotage, her accusations against security personnel, her paranoid fixation on imaginary threats, all classic symptoms of reactive trauma psychosis. Marcus nodded approvingly. How long before we can have her committed? I can sign the papers tonight. Emergency psychiatric hold, 72 hours minimum. Once she's in the facility, we can extend it indefinitely based on ongoing evaluation. Maya pressed closer to the window, using her phone to record the conversation. This was the smoking gun she needed, proof that her therapist and Marcus were conspiring to have her institutionalized based on fabricated mental health concerns. What about the parents? Marcus asked. Elena's already expressing concerns about Maya's episodes. I've been building a case file documenting her declining mental state, her inability to distinguish reality from trauma-induced hallucinations. Any reasonable court will agree that institutionalization is in her best interest. And Richard? Dr. Patterson smiled coldly. Richard Blackstone is a rational man who trusts medical professionals. When I explain that his adopted daughter is suffering from severe psychological trauma that manifests as paranoid delusions, he'll understand that residential treatment is the only option. Maya felt sick as she realized how thoroughly she'd been manipulated. Every therapy session, every probing question about her adjustment issues and trust problems had been designed to build a case against her mental stability. Dr. Patterson wasn't trying to help her heal. She was documenting Maya's responses to create a profile of dangerous instability. The timing is crucial, Marcus continued. I need her removed from the house before the London trip. She's becoming too observant, asking too many questions. The commitment order will be executed tomorrow morning, Dr. Patterson assured him. Maya will be in secure psychiatric care before noon. Maya's hands shook as she processed the timeline. She had less than 12 hours before Marcus's trap closed around her. Once she was locked in a psychiatric facility, labeled as delusional and dangerous, no one would believe her warnings about Richard's safety. She slipped away from the window and made it back to Rosa's car without being detected, her mind racing through options. Elena and Rosa were waiting at the house, expecting her to return with evidence of Marcus's midnight meeting with Chung Technologies. Instead, she'd discovered something worse, a conspiracy that reached beyond corporate espionage into the medical and legal systems designed to protect vulnerable children. The drive home felt like a funeral procession. Maya stared out at the darkened streets, wondering if this would be her last night of freedom. Tomorrow, she'd be strapped to a bed in a psychiatric ward while Marcus proceeded with phase 2 of his plan, eliminating Richard without any inconvenient witnesses to complicate the narrative. Elena met her at the back door, her face etched with worry. How did it go? Did you get the recording? Maya nodded numbly, handing over her phone. I got something. But Elena were out of time. They gathered in Maya's room, the three women who'd formed an unlikely alliance against Marcus's conspiracy. Maya played the recording of Dr. Patterson and Marcus planning her commitment, watching Elena's face transform from concern to fury. They're going to take you away, Elena whispered. Tomorrow morning, and once I'm gone, there'll be no one left to warn Richard about the London trip, Maya said. Marcus will have eliminated the only witness who could expose his plan. Rosa clenched her fists, her grief over Carlos mixing with rage at the injustice being perpetrated against Maya. We can't let them do this, Mia. We won't let them silence you like they silenced my nephew. Elena stood up, her maternal protectiveness transforming into something fierce and dangerous. We're going to Richard right now. We're showing him everything, the surveillance footage, Carlos's files, the recording of Marcus and Dr. Patterson. He has to listen. But what if he doesn't believe us? Maya asked. What if Marcus convinces him that this is all part of my psychological breakdown? Elena's expression hardened with determination. Then we'll make him believe. Richard's not stupid when he sees the evidence. When he understands how thoroughly Marcus has betrayed him, he'll have to accept the truth. Maya looked at her adoptive mother and saw something that gave her hope, a woman who'd found her strength in protecting her family. Elena had spent months feeling helpless as her husband's paranoia and work stress consumed their lives. Now she finally had a way to fight back. "There's something else," Maya said, pulling out the flash drive containing Marcus's corporate espionage files. "Carlos documented everything about Dr. Morrison's murder. If we can prove Marcus killed him, Richard will understand that we're not dealing with simple betrayal. We're dealing with assassination." Rosa nodded grimly. "Carlos died for this information. We're not going to let his sacrifice be meaningless." Elena checked her watch. "It's almost 3 a.m. Richard's probably in his office. He's been having trouble sleeping since the Singapore trip was canceled." Maya felt the familiar fear rising in her throat, the terror of not being believed, of having her voice dismissed by the adults who held power over her life. But this time was different. This time, she wasn't alone. "Whatever happens," Elena sighed, squeezing Maya's hand, "you're not going to that psychiatric facility. I won't let them take you. Promise." Maya whispered. "Promise," Elena replied firmly. "You're my daughter now, and I protect what's mine." The three women gathered their evidence and prepared to wake Richard Blackstone, knowing that the next hour would determine whether Maya Ramea remained free to fight or disappeared into the psychiatric system, where her warnings would be dismissed as the ravings of a traumatized child. As they walked toward Richard's office, Maya felt the weight of everything she'd learned about trust, family, and the power of being heard. The invisible girl was about to step fully into the light, and Marcus, Sullivan's carefully orchestrated conspiracy, was about to face its greatest threat, a foster kid who refused to be silenced.